The Council's last hope. Ambassador Calera of the Zinthi Empire watched the human walk into the Grand Council chamber and immediately knew why 17 species had rejected this diplomatic assignment. The human moved wrong. Too casual. Too confident. Too unbothered by the weight of 40,000 years of galactic tradition pressing down on this room. His name was Marcus Webb, and according to his file, he had been a diplomat for only 3 years. 3 years. Calera had been serving the Council for 2 centuries. The youngest ambassador in the chamber had 60 years of experience. And yet, here stood this human, wearing a suit that looked comfortable instead of formal, carrying a simple data tablet instead of the ceremonial documentation crystals, and smiling like he was meeting friends instead of the most powerful beings in 7 sectors. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly without amplification. Another rule broken. Ambassadors were supposed to use the translation spheres that made everyone sound equally formal and distant. "I'm Marcus Webb. I understand we have a war to stop." Calera's head tendrils tightened with stress. 40 species watched this human with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. "You did not mention war casually in the Grand Council. You certainly did not smile while doing it." "Ambassador Webb," Calera said, using her most formal tone, "you have been called here because the Kethran Empire and the Vorlian Collective have been locked in conflict for 17 cycles. 400 billion beings are threatened. 12 diplomatic teams have failed to negotiate peace. You are, regrettably, our final option." "Regrettably?" Marcus raised one eyebrow. "Is that because I'm human, or because I'm the 17th choice?" The chamber went silent. No one questioned the Council's decisions, especially not with humor. Hashtag breaking the rules. Calera is second in command. A crystalline being named Thresh, leaned close. "He insults us already. This was a mistake." "Perhaps," Calera whispered back. "Or perhaps this is exactly why the others failed." She studied Marcus Webb more carefully. Yes, he broke every rule. But there was something in his eyes. Not disrespect. Understanding. Like he knew exactly what he was doing and why. "Ambassador Webb," Calera continued, "the Kethran-Vorlian conflict began over resource rights in the Tertius system. Both sides claim historical ownership. Both sides have evidence. Both sides refuse to compromise. Every diplomatic team has tried to find middle ground. All have failed. The war fleets grow larger each day. If they engage, the destruction will be catastrophic." Marcus nodded slowly, then did something that made every ambassador in the room freeze. He laughed. Not cruel laughter. Genuine amusement. "You're telling me," he said, "that 2 massive empires are about to kill billions of people because they're arguing about who owned a star system first?" "It is more complicated than," Calera began. "No, it's not." Marcus pulled up his tablet. "I read the files during the trip here. The Kethrans settled Tertius III about 6,000 years ago. The Vorlians had an outpost on Tertius V about 8,000 years ago. Both sides say this gives them rights to the whole system. Both sides have been escalating for 17 years. And 17 diplomatic teams have tried to argue about history, right? Historical precedent is the foundation of interstellar law," said Ambassador Vorex of the Kethran Empire, speaking for the first time. His scales rippled with barely controlled anger. "We will not abandon our legitimate claims." "Neither will we," added Ambassador Silt of the Vorlian Collective, her multiple eyes narrowing. "The human does not understand complexity of the situation." Marcus smiled again. That dangerous, knowing smile. "You're right. I don't understand how 2 civilizations that have mastered faster-than-light travel, quantum computing, and artificial gravity are acting like children fighting over a toy." The chamber erupted. Voices, color changes, pheromone bursts, and energy signatures all expressing outrage. Calera watched it happen, waiting to see what the human would do next. Hashtag the human method. Marcus stood quietly while the council raged. He did not apologize, did not back down, just waited with that same calm confidence until Calera raised her hand for silence. "You have insulted both parties," Calera said carefully. "Typically, this would end negotiations before they begin." "Good thing we're not doing typical negotiations then," Marcus said. He walked toward the center of the chamber, where a holographic display showed the Tertius system. Here's what I don't understand. Tertius has 7 planets, right? Plus asteroid belts, moons, and enough resources to support both empires for 1,000 years. But you're fighting about who owned it first instead of how to share it now. Sharing is not the question, Vorex said coldly. Ownership is. Our ancestors died establishing those colonies. So did ours, Sylph countered. We have burial sites on Tertius 5 that predate your colonies by millennia. Exactly my point, Marcus said. You both have history there. You both have legitimate connections. But here's what the previous 17 diplomatic teams missed. They tried to make you agree on the past. I'm not going to do that. Calera leaned forward. Then what will you do? I'm going to make you focus on the future. Marcus tapped his tablet, and the holographic display changed. The Tertius system has enough resources for both of you. The problem is you're so busy arguing about ownership that you haven't thought about partnership. We will never partner with those who deny our historical rights, Vorex declared. We will never yield to those who ignore our ancestral claims, Sylph added. Then you'll both die. Marcus said it flatly, without emotion. Your war fleets will destroy each other. Billions will die. And you know what will happen to Tertius? Some other species will move in and take it while you're both recovering. Maybe the Zinthi. Maybe the Crystalline Collective. Someone who didn't waste their resources on a pointless war. Hashtag the shift. Calera saw it then. The moment when both ambassadors stopped being angry and started being worried. Marcus had found their real fear. Not losing the argument. Losing everything. You're saying we should just surrender our claims? Vorex asked carefully. I'm saying your claims don't matter if you're dead. Marcus changed the display again, showing fleet movements. Here's what I learned from human history. We fought wars about ownership for thousands of years. Countries, territories, resources. Everyone claiming historical rights. Everyone refusing to compromise. And you know what we learned? He paused, making sure every ambassador was listening. We learned that being right doesn't matter if being right kills everyone. We learned that sharing resources is better than fighting over them. We learned that the future is more important than the past. Marcus looked directly at Vorex, then at Sylph. Your ancestors would want you to survive, not to die proving a point about who was there first. Silence filled the chamber. Real silence this time. Not shocked silence. Thinking silence. What do you propose? Calera asked softly. Hashtag a different solution. Marcus pulled up a new document. Joint administration. Tertius becomes neutral territory, managed by both empires equally. You split resources 50-50. You both get to maintain your historical sites. You both get to settle new colonies. And most importantly, you both get to live. That is not how interstellar law works, Ambassador Thresh said. Ownership must be clear. Boundaries must be defined. Then change the law, Marcus said simply, or keep it and die. Your choice. Vorex and Sylph looked at each other. For the first time in 17 years, actually looked at each other instead of through each other. The council would need to approve such an arrangement, Vorex said slowly. We have no precedent for shared sovereignty, Sylph added. Then make a new precedent. Marcus gestured around the chamber. You have 40 species here. All of you have fought wars about territory. All of you have historical conflicts. Imagine if you had a model for how to share instead of fight. This could change everything. Calera felt something shift in the room. Not agreement yet, but possibility. The human had done something none of the other diplomats had managed. He had made both sides think about something other than winning. This requires discussion, Vorex said finally. Private consultation with our governments. Same for us, Sylph agreed. Take your time, Marcus said. Just remember, your fleets are getting closer every day. Eventually, someone's going to fire first, and then discussion won't matter anymore. Both ambassadors left the chamber. The moment the doors closed, the remaining council members turned to Marcus with expressions Calera could not quite read. That was the most unconventional diplomatic approach I have witnessed in 2 centuries, she said. Did it work? Marcus asked. We do not know yet. Then I guess we'll find out. He smiled that dangerous smile again. In the meantime, I'm going to need access to both fleet's positions, communication channels, and your emergency response protocols. Why? Because if this negotiation fails, someone needs to stop those fleets from destroying each other. Marcus headed toward the exit. And since I'm the one who insulted both sides equally, I figure I'm the best person to try. #, the waiting game. 3 days passed. Marcus spent them doing things that made Calera increasingly nervous. He contacted both fleets directly without permission. He shared jokes with Kethan commanders and recipes with Vorlian captains. He asked about their families, their homes, their fears. He did not talk about the negotiation at all. What are you doing? Calera finally asked, finding him in the communications center at midnight. Building relationships, Marcus said, showing her his screen. Look at this. Commander Thex of the Kethan 3rd Fleet has a daughter who just got accepted to engineering school. Captain Marva of the Vorlian 7th Fleet raises these beautiful flowering plants. They're both people, Calera, not just military units. You are making them harder to fight, she realized. I'm making them remember why they shouldn't fight. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The thing about war is, it's easy when the enemy is just a name or a ship on a screen. It's harder when you know they're someone's parent, someone's child, someone who grows flowers or celebrates their kids' achievements. Humans do this often, make war personal to prevent it. We learned to, after we almost destroyed ourselves doing it the other way. Marcus stood up. Any word from the ambassadors? They return tomorrow. Both governments have made decisions. Then I guess tomorrow we find out if breaking all your rules was worth it. #, the decision. The council chamber filled again. Vorex and Sylph enter from opposite doors, as protocol demanded. But Calera noticed something different. They did not avoid eye contact this time. They looked at each other with something that might have been respect. The Kethan Empire has considered the proposal. Vorex announced formally. We find it acceptable, pending specific terms about resource distribution and administrative oversight. Every ambassador in the room froze. The Kethrans never compromised. Never. Sylph spoke next. The Vorlian Collective has also considered the proposal. We agree to join administration, with conditions about historical site preservation and settlement rights. Calera could not believe what she was hearing. Both sides agreeing? Impossible. Marcus just nodded like he had expected this. Good. Now let's work out those details. I'm thinking we start with... Wait, Vorex interrupted. We have a question first. For the human... Ask away. Why did you insult us? Vorex's scales rippled with genuine curiosity. Every other diplomat tried to flatter us, to appeal to our pride. You called us children fighting over toys. Marcus smiled. That same dangerous, knowing smile. Because flattery wasn't working. 17 teams tried being nice, being respectful, appealing to your better nature. And you kept refusing to compromise because you were both so focused on being right that you forgot about being smart. So you decided to make us angry instead? Sylph asked. I decided to make you think. Sometimes the only way to get past people's pride is to poke at it until they realize pride is the problem. Marcus gestured between them. You're both powerful empires, both ancient civilizations, both have legitimate claims. But you were so busy trying to make each other admit you were right that you stopped looking for solutions. I just redirected your focus. By being disrespectful, Thresh said, his crystalline form flickering with disapproval. By being honest, Marcus corrected. Every other diplomat told you what you wanted to hear. I told you what you needed to hear. There's a difference. Calera's tendrils relaxed for the first time in weeks. And that is why you succeeded where others failed. Not because you followed our rules, but because you understood what those rules were hiding. #, part 2. The real challenge, 1,500 words. #, unexpected complications. The negotiations should have been simple after both sides agreed to join administration. They were not. Details became battlegrounds. Resource percentages sparked arguments. Administrative structures caused deadlocks. For every agreement, 3 new disagreements emerged. Marcus sat in his temporary office, reviewing the latest proposal draft, when Calera entered without announcing herself. Her tendrils were dark blue, which meant serious concern. "We have a problem," she said. "Just one? I'm counting at least 12 in this draft alone. A different problem. Vorex and Sylph are compromising too easily on small issues." Marcus looked up. "That's a bad thing?" "It means they are saving their rigidity for something larger. Something they have not yet revealed." Calera's tendrils tightened. "In my experience, when both sides suddenly become agreeable, they are preparing for a final demand that will destroy everything. Then we need to figure out what that demand is before they make it." Marcus pulled up his communication logs. "Give me 2 hours. I'm going to call in some help." "What help?" "The council assigned no support team." "I know. That's why I'm using mine." Hashtag human backup. An hour later, Calera found herself in a conference room with 3 additional humans who had arrived on a fast transport. They looked nothing like Marcus. One was elderly, wearing traditional Earth robes. One was young, covered in technological implants. One was middle-aged, dressed in casual clothes, and eating something that smelled terrible. "Calera, meet my team," Marcus said. "Dr. Sarah Chun, cultural anthropologist. She's 93 and has studied more alien civilizations than most species know exist. Tommy Vasquez, information specialist. If it's been said, written, or transmitted, he can find it. And Maria Santos, my mentor. She taught me everything about diplomacy, mostly by showing me what not to do." "I prefer demonstrated creative alternatives," Maria said, still eating. "And this is delicious, by the way. You Zinthi know how to spice food." Calera's tendrils flickered with confusion. The council did not approve additional human diplomats. "Good thing we're not diplomats," Sarah said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came with age. "We're consultants. Marcus called us because he suspects something's wrong. So let's figure out what." Tommy pulled up holographic displays with terrifying speed. "I've been analyzing all communication between the Kethran and Vorlian governments over the past 3 days. There's a pattern. Both sides are using the same specific phrases in their internal communications. Temporary agreement. Short-term compromise. Strategic positioning. They're both planning to break the treaty," Calera said, her worst fears confirmed. "Not break it," Sarah corrected. "Studying the data. Outlast it. They're both agreeing now because they think they can wait out the other side. Kethrans live about 200 years. Vorlians live about 400. They're playing a very long game." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "So they're both compromising now, planning to renegotiate when the other side's leadership changes?" "Exactly," Tommy confirmed. "They're not making peace. They're making a pause." Hashtag the hidden truth. Maria finished her food and wiped her hands carefully. "Here's what I don't understand. Why now? Why did both sides suddenly agree after 17 years of refusing?" Marcus poked their pride. "Sure, but that shouldn't have been enough." Calera had been wondering the same thing. The fleets were getting close to engagement range. Perhaps fear of immediate war overcame their stubbornness. Or something else scared them more than each other, Sarah said quietly. "Tommy, pull up intelligence reports from the Tertius sector. Everything from the past month." Tommy's fingers flew across his display. Then he stopped, face going pale. Oh no. What?" Marcus demanded. "There's a 3rd fleet moving toward Tertius. It arrived at the edge of the sector 3 weeks ago and has been staying hidden in the asteroid belts. It's not Kethran or Vorlian." Calera's tendrils went completely rigid. "Show me." The display changed, showing ship signatures that made her feel sick. Dark hulls, predator designs, energy signatures she hoped never to see again. "Dravix," she whispered. "The Dravix hegemony is here. Hashtag ancient enemies." Marcus looked between them. "I'm guessing from your reactions that Dravix is bad?" Bad doesn't begin to describe it, Calera said, her voice shaking. The Draviks are a conquering species. They don't negotiate, don't trade, don't compromise. They watch species fight each other, wait until both sides are weakened, then move in and take everything. They've destroyed 17 civilizations in the past 1,000 years. Sarah nodded grimly. And they're about to make it 19. The Kethrans and Vorlians know. That's why they suddenly agreed to negotiate. Not because Marcus convinced them, but because they're both terrified of the Draviks. Then we have a bigger problem than treaty details, Maria said. We have to stop 3 sides from fighting instead of 2. Marcus stood up, walking to the window that showed the stars. No, we have to make 3 sides become 2 sides. Or better yet, 1 side. Against the Draviks? Calera's tendrils trembled. Even combined, the Kethran and Vorlian fleets would struggle. The Draviks have technology centuries ahead of most species. Then we need even the odds. Marcus turned back to face them. Tommy, how long until the Draviks fleet move from hiding? Based on their historical patterns, they'll attack about 3 days after the Kethran Vorlian fleets would have destroyed each other. So if we sign this peace treaty, they'll probably wait 2 weeks to make sure it's stable, then attack anyway. Perfect. That gives us time. Marcus smiled, but this time it was different. Not dangerous. Determined. Time to do something incredibly stupid that might just work. Hashtag breaking more rules. 6 hours later, Marcus did something that made Calera question whether humans understood the concept of survival instinct. He called a meeting with Vorax and Sylph, but did not tell them why. When they arrived, he did not say hello, did not offer refreshments, just pulled up Tommy's data and showed them the Draviks fleet. You've known about this for 3 weeks, Marcus said flatly. Both of you. That's why you suddenly agreed to negotiate. Not because of anything I said, but because you're both terrified. Vorax's scales went pale. Sylpha's eyes flickered with what might have been shame. The human speaks truth, Vorax admitted finally. We detected the Draviks 17 days ago. Our intelligence services informed us that they were waiting for us to weaken each other. We discovered them independently, Sylph added. Our council decided that survival required cooperation, even if temporary. Temporary, Marcus repeated. That's the key word, isn't it? You're both planning to break this treaty the moment the Draviks threat is gone. You're not making peace. You're making a strategic alliance. Neither ambassador denied it. Here's the thing, Marcus continued, his voice harder than Calera had ever heard it. The Draviks aren't going away. They're not going to attack and leave if you win. They're going to keep coming back. They've been doing it for 1,000 years. And eventually, they'll win, unless you do something different. We cannot defeat the Draviks alone, Vorax said quietly. Their technology is too advanced. Then don't fight them alone. Don't fight them as temporary allies. Fight them as partners. Real partners. Marcus pulled up new data. Sarah, explain what we found. Sarah stepped forward. The Draviks have a weakness. They're amazing at conquering divided species, but they've never successfully conquered a truly unified force. Every time they've faced a coalition that actually worked together, they've retreated. It's in their combat doctrine. They don't fight united enemies because it's not worth the losses. So if the Kethrans and Vorlians actually unite, not just temporarily but permanently, the Draviks will leave? Sylph asked. Not just you two, Maria said. We're talking about a real alliance. Joint military command. Shared resources. Combined technology. The kind of partnership where neither side is the senior partner. True equals. Hashtag the real negotiation. Vorax and Sylph looked at each other. Really looked at each other. And Calera saw something change in their expressions. This is not what we agreed to, Vorax said slowly. We agreed to joint administration of Tertius. Not alliance. Not partnership. No, Marcus agreed. You agreed to a temporary solution that would let you survive the immediate threat. I'm proposing something different. Something permanent. Something that actually solved the problem. By making us dependent on each other, Syl said, by making you stronger together than apart, Marcus pulled up historical data. Look at human history. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, nation against nation, culture against culture. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times. And you know what saved us? He changed the display to show Earth's space programs, united governments, and cooperative projects. We learned that cooperation isn't weakness. It's survival. We learned that giving up a little sovereignty is worth gaining a lot of security. We learned that former enemies can become the strongest allies because they understand each other's strength. Calera watched both ambassadors process this, saw them struggle with pride, fear, and possibility. What you're proposing would change everything, Vorex said. Our empires have been separate for 12,000 years, and they've been competing for resources, territory, and influence the whole time, Marcus countered. How's that working out for you? You almost went to war over one star system. The Draviks are about to attack you both. And even if you survive this, there will be another crisis, another conflict, another threat, unless you change the pattern. Hashtag a new path. Syl spoke first. This decision is beyond our authority. Our governments would need to approve such a fundamental change. Then ask them, Maria said simply, ask if they'd rather die independent or survive together. But frame it right, Sarah added. Don't make it about weakness or surrender. Make it about evolution. The next step for both civilizations. Moving from competition to cooperation. From rivals to partners. Tommy pulled up more data. I can show you 17 species that tried to stand alone against the Draviks. All conquered. And 3 coalitions that unified and survived. The math is pretty clear. Vorex and Sylph sat in silence for a long time. Calera watched them, hardly daring to breathe. This was bigger than the Tertius conflict. This was potentially reshaping galactic politics. Finally, Vorex spoke. I will present this to my Empire's Council. I cannot guarantee their response, but I will present it honestly. As will I, Sylph agreed. Though I must say, this is not what we expected from human diplomacy. What did you expect? Marcus asked. Something more? Vorex searched for the word. Gentle, subtle, political. Humans tried subtle for thousands of years, Maria said. It didn't work. So we learned to be direct, honest, sometimes uncomfortably honest, because survival is more important than politeness. Hashtag the waiting. 2 weeks passed. The longest 2 weeks of Calera's life. The Draviks fleet remained hidden, waiting. The Kethrin and Vorlian fleets held position, also waiting. And Marcus's team worked constantly, preparing contingency plans for every possible outcome. What if they say no? Calera asked one night, finding Marcus alone in the observation deck. Then we try something else, he said calmly. Humans are good at improvising. You seem very confident for someone who broke every diplomatic rule. That's because I learned something important about rules, Marcus said, looking out at the stars. They're useful for normal situations. But this isn't normal. This is survival. And survival requires different thinking. Different thinking like insulting both sides and proposing impossible alliances? Exactly. He smiled. You know what the real problem with your 17 previous diplomatic teams was? Tell me. They tried to make the Kethrins and Vorlians compromise without changing anything fundamental. They wanted peace without transformation. But sometimes peace requires becoming something new. Marcus gestured at the stars. Humanity almost destroyed itself learning that lesson. If my breaking your rules helps these species avoid making our mistakes, then I'll break every rule you have. Hashtag the answer. The next morning, Vorex and Sylph returned to the council chamber. This time, they entered together, walking side by side. That alone told Calera something had changed. The Kethrin Empire has made its decision, Vorex announced. We agree to the proposed alliance. Full partnership with the Vorlian Collective, including joint military command, shared resource development, and unified diplomatic representation. Calera's tendrils went rigid with shock. The council chamber erupted in noise. The Vorlian Collective has reached the same conclusion, Sylph added. We accept the partnership terms, beginning immediately. Marcus just nodded, like this was exactly what he expected. Good. Now let's talk about how to make the Draviks regret showing up, because I have some ideas about combined fleet tactics that they're not going to like. Hashtag Aftermath. 3 months later, Calera stood in what was now called the Kethenvorlian Alliance headquarters, watching their combined fleet conduct training exercises. The Draviks had retreated 2 weeks after the alliance was announced, just as Sarah predicted. They had not attacked, had not even tried. Marcus was scheduled to leave the next day, his mission complete. Calera found him packing his few belongings. "The Council wants to award you its highest honor for diplomatic achievement," she said. "I'll pass, thanks. Award ceremonies are boring. They also want to know if you'll help negotiate other conflicts. We have 17 ongoing disputes that could benefit from your unique approach." Marcus laughed. Unique is a nice way of saying rule-breaking. Effective is a more accurate term. Calera's tendrils shifted to warm colors. "You succeeded where others failed because you understood something we have forgotten, that sometimes the rules we create to maintain order become the obstacles to solving problems." "The rules aren't bad," Marcus said. "They work fine for normal situations. But when you're dealing with pride, fear, and survival, you need different tools. Human tools. Universal tools," Marcus corrected. "Honesty, direct communication, willingness to challenge assumptions. Any species can use them. You just have to be brave enough to try." He finished packing and turned to face her. "Here's my advice for your next impossible negotiation. Don't send 17 teams trying the same approach. Send one team willing to try something different. Break the rules when rules don't work. Insult people when flattery fails. And remember that being liked is less important than being effective. That is not traditional diplomatic wisdom." "No," Marcus agreed. "It's human diplomatic wisdom. We learned it the hard way. But you don't have to. That's the advantage of learning from other species' mistakes." Hashtag legacy. Marcus left the next day, but his impact remained. The Kethenvorlian Alliance became the model for 3 more partnerships in the next year. Species that had been enemies for centuries learned to cooperate. Conflicts that had seemed unsolvable found solutions. And the Grand Council quietly updated its diplomatic protocols, not abandoning the old rules entirely, but adding new ones. Rules about when to break rules. Guidelines for creative problem-solving. Principles for valuing effectiveness over tradition. They called it the Webb Doctrine, though Marcus would have hated the name. The core principle was simple. When traditional diplomacy fails, try something different. Be direct. Be honest. Be willing to make people uncomfortable if it makes them think. Calera kept a copy of Marcus's final report in her office. The last line read, "Diplomacy isn't about making everyone happy. It's about keeping everyone alive. Sometimes those two things require opposite approaches. Choose wisely." She thought about that often, especially when facing difficult negotiations. And she thought about the human who broke all the rules and saved billions of lives by doing it. The galaxy was learning slowly that sometimes the best solution came not from following ancient wisdom, but from questioning it. That progress required not just intelligence and experience, but courage to think differently. That was humanity's real gift. Not technology or military might, but the willingness to challenge the way things had always been done. To break rules when rules became obstacles. To choose survival over tradition. It was a lesson the galaxy would remember for a long time. And somewhere out there, Marcus Webb was probably breaking more rules, solving more impossible problems, and teaching more species that the best answer to "this is how we've always done it" was sometimes then "let's try something new."